You need winners? Let the Football Insiders show you how to make money. General Manager Al DeMarco, a former sports reporter and contributor on Fox Sports, MSNBC, and Comcast Sports TV, brings over 25 years of handicapping experience to the table. CEO Steve Budin, the author of Bets, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, is the man responsible for creating the sports betting industry. Together, they are the Football Insiders, your number one source for football winners.
Well, the Dogs had their day last Sunday in the NFL. No bigger upset than the Dolphins knocking off the Steelers after two impressive home routes. The Steelers laying the egg in Miami, and even worse, Ben Roethlisberger getting injured, which kind of ruins this week's showdown with the Patriots. But we're here to talk about that game and all of your top NFL games from a point spread perspective. Hi, everyone. Al DeMarco here, and joining me, as he has each and every weekend for the past 10 years, Steve Budin, and this is the countdown, the kickoff, and we are the Football Insiders. And Steve, last weekend, the underdogs had their way, going 8-5-2 against the spread, but you, as a former bookmaker, the guy that created the offshore sports book betting industry as we know it today, you know as well as I do, a handicapper for over 20 years, that the gambling public can never get too comfortable, because just since the Dogs owned last weekend doesn't mean they're going to bark loud and proud this weekend.
Absolutely right, and it's why we always preach from day one that you don't spread your money out on every single game on the board anyway. You pick your spots and take your shots, and when you're betting one game a week versus 10 games a week, you can't get wiped out as the tides turn.
I know last week, the one big favorite, the biggest favorite to cover as far as I was concerned, the Buffalo Bills, was the lock of all locks. That was my best bet last Sunday, and they absolutely destroyed San Francisco. So just because the Dogs dominated didn't mean you didn't find value with the favorites. Guys, you often hear gamblers say, oh my God, you got to play the Dogs. You got to play those home dogs. That's just a general statement. Listen, every game has to be handicapped and looked at as an individual entity. Every little week is looked upon as an individual season as far as I'm concerned. And that's why we're going to start this week with an interesting game with so many rich subplots. The Minnesota Vikings coming off a bye, undefeated, Sam Bradford returning to Philadelphia. The Eagles, of course, sending Bradford to Minnesota when Teddy Bridgewater was injured 10 days before the start of the season, sending their number one quarterback off packing, giving the starting job to rookie Carson Wentz. No one cared when the Eagles started 3-0. But after back-to-back losses to the Redskins and the Detroit Lions on the road, now everybody a little concerned. Steve, as far as I'm concerned, this is an underpriced favorite on the road, and the Vikings, to me, the best defense in the NFL. And I think this is a sucker play, a trap play, because everybody is looking at the Eagles expecting them to show up. Well, they didn't show up in Detroit. They didn't show up in Washington defensively, and they aren't going to show up in this game either.
No, well, if you haven't figured out that the Vikings are for real, then I've got some oceanfront land to sell you in Las Vegas. Look, Vikings, they head to the city of brotherly love. And Al, as you know, calling Philadelphia the city of brotherly love is like calling a bald guy curly. Fact is, people from Philly, they get a little testy at times, especially when the Eagles are stinking up the joint like they did last week, losing 27-20 to the Redskins. Now, here's the news flash. Nobody got injured from Minnesota last week. That's because they had a bye. Injuries, though, have played a crucial role in the Vikings' success. Sam Bradford, just like you mentioned, continues to play extremely well, stepping in for injured Teddy Bridgewater. Look, Sam he's been nearly flawless in only 4 games, 990 yards, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. The Vikings, they continue to have success with their ground game as well, even without Adrian Peterson. But you said it. To me, it's not just about the offense, it's about the defense too. Give me Minnesota, Al, I'm sorry, but the grumpiness only gets worse in Philly next week. Trust me, Vikings win and cover.
Well, listen, covering is all the Vikings have done since Mike Zimmer came to town, 19-3 against the spread, including a perfect 5-0 straight up and ATS mark so far this season. The thing that made the Eagles so successful the initial 4 games of the season was their defense, and their pass defense particularly, because Jim Schwartz, their new defensive coordinator, installed the 4-3 defense with that wide 9 scheme that's designed to get a pass rush without necessarily relying on blitzes. First 3 games, they were in the top 3 in terms of pass defense. In Detroit, the first chink in the armor was exposed. They pretty much sleptwalked through the first half against the Lions. Second half, they showed up, got 4 sacks. Matt Stafford held the Lions to like 40 net yards and 3 first downs. But against Washington, total collapse. When you look at the numbers of what the Redskins did to them, 26 first downs, 493 total yards, 230 yards rushing, 7 yards a carry for the Redskins. A team that did not run the ball at all well in the first 4 games of the season, averaging only 90 yards a game. But the most telling stat, that defense for Schwartz and the Eagles, 0 sacks of Kirk Cousins. They are not going to get to Sam Bradford. Minnesota, a pretty darn good offensive line, but more importantly, Bradford, quick release, and he has something he didn't have in his 1-year tenure with the Eagles. He has wide receivers with speed, and the Eagles still have a secondary that has suspect coverage problems, and I think this is a cheap chalk price. Go ahead and lay the 2.5 to 3 points with the Vikings, and don't look back in this one. Next game, Kansas City and New Orleans. Hey, New Orleans has a 21-0 lead at home last week against Carolina. They give up the lead. They have to win the game on a 52-yard field goal in the closing seconds. It was a typical New Orleans game. Lots of yards, lots of points given up. Now they go on the road, take on a Kansas City team that put the Raiders out of their misery and ended Oakland's 3-game winning streak with the win at the Coliseum, where the Kansas City Chiefs always win. Now they're back at home. I thought it was an impressive performance for Andy Reid's team, considering that prior to their bye week, they were absolutely shellacked at Pittsburgh. But it was a nice win. Now they're coming at home. But, Steve, I got to tell you, this one could be a lot of offensive fireworks, and I think that you have to lean toward perhaps taking the points or looking at the over in this particular contest.
All right, the Saints very quietly trying to rack up win number 3 in a row. They outscored the Panthers, like you said, 41-38 last Sunday at home in New Orleans. On the other side, Chiefs dominated the Raiders 26-10. They were on the road. Now, look, Al, I don't like to bet breeze away from home. I don't usually like to bet breeze away from dome. But I do think they keep it close enough to cover this game. The Chiefs' defense, they're kind of like Taylor Swift. They get a lot of credit they don't deserve. I mean, on the non-offensive teams, they can hold their own. But with the explosive teams, well, those teams usually have their way with them. New Orleans is an explosive team. I'm going to take the points and the Saints.
Knocking Taylor Swift, how dare you?
I knew you would be upset about that. I knew
Knocking
it.
Taylor with those legs and that red lipstick. I am just stunned. I
knew it, Al. I knew it.
Oh, Tay-Tay. All our fans. I mean, right now, we just lost viewers here at the show. Hey, listen, here's the interesting thing. You know, in reviewing the Saints game last week, I thought one of the most interesting things, they won that game despite 10 penalties for 126 yards. They had 3 pass interference calls on them right at or near the goal line, and all 3 led to touchdowns to the Carolina Panthers. So they gift-wrapped 3 touchdowns to Carolina, which made that game interesting. But in looking at the Kansas City win, 26-10 against Oakland, Alex Smith was 19 for 22 last week against an Oakland pass defense that was the worst in the league, coming into that game allowing 64.9% completions. This week, he faces the number 30 pass defense in the league. The Saints allow 65.8% completions. If it worked last week, it's going to work again this week. A lot short, medium range passes. That's where Alex Smith excels. Saints don't have a pass rush. The other thing that worked last week against Oakland was the ground game. Spencer Ware with a career high, 131 yards rushing. Now the Saints are coming into this game with the number 26 run defense, giving up 118 yards a game, 4.0 yards per carry. They're going to be able to run the ball at will against the Saints, but Kansas City has no pass rush. That has been their biggest problem on defense all year. So I think you have to bet this game, take the Saints, Bet this game taking the over. Saints on a 9-3 ATS run as a road dog. And again, I think that you're looking at total here of 50 points. Hell, with these two teams, it could go over 50 points by the end of the third quarter. If you're going to play it, not one of my favorite games again. I think you take, like you said, ride the Saints on the road. Look at this one going over. Next game, Detroit and Washington. Hey, listen, they both have beat the Eagles. They've got that much in common. Pretty much a pick-em game. A month ago, and you talk about parity in the NFL. A month ago, you had Jay Gruden on the hot seat after starting the season 0-2 with consecutive home losses to the Steelers and the Cowboys. Now, suddenly, Jay Gruden, Redskins, nay, we don't have any problem. We just beat the Eagles. We've reeled off 4 straight wins. Lions coming off back-to-back home wins against the Eagles and the Rams. They've squared their record at 3-3. I think the early season betting favorite to be fired first in the NFL was Jim Caldwell. Things are looking better. I don't think so for the Lions. So I still think this is a mirage. Other than Matt Stafford, they don't have a lot of talent on that team. I still don't know what to make of the Redskins, but hey, they beat the Giants, they beat the Eagles, they beat the Ravens. Kirk Cousins is playing a little better, and they certainly have confidence in a pick-em game. I guess if you put a gun to my head, I'd back the Redskins.
Al, have you ever heard a gambler say, this ought to be a fun game to watch? When a gambler says that, what he really means is he's freaking clueless on who's going to cover. And let me tell you something, Al. This game ought to be a fun game to watch, my friend. One thing I can tell you, these offenses, they're both clicking right now. For Washington, you said it, Captain Kirk Cousins at the controls, had a good game last week, couple of touchdowns, only 1 interception. I mean, he's not going to ever get you more than 300 yards passing, but he will put up 25 points or more on this Detroit defense who was last seen on the side of a milk carton. I mean, to say they're missing in action is like saying that the actress who played Precious is slightly overweight. Look, Detroit can do one thing and one thing only, and they do it with the best of them. They can outscore their opponents. I think this game is going to rain touchdowns all day. I'm going over the posted total here. This one, Al, is going to be a score fest.
Well, the Redskins have gone over in 10 of their last 11 games. By the way, if you're interested in the side selection ATS-wise in this game, I will warn you that the Lions are 4-6-2 against the spread in their last dozen games at home. To me, this is a game that, again, I wouldn't watch. There are certainly better games on the board than this one. And listen, guys, we are going to take a little break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about one of your fan favorites, Steve, Rex Ryan, his Bills, winners of 4 in a row. There's another guy who got himself off the hot seat, taking on the Dolphins in Miami after their big upset in one of the Steelers. And we will be analyzing that game and more when we come back after this brief commercial break. 4.5 years ago, I created the Charity Play of the Week program. And in that time, you and I have created a community of caregivers and have combined to contribute well over $350,000 to people in times of need. For those of you that have joined me, my thanks. For those of you that are not aware of the Charity Play of the Week program, let me just remind you, once a week, I give one of the top plays from one of the handicappers away here at the site for free, no strings attached. If it wins, then on a quid pro quo basis, I ask you to make a donation to a charity recipient that I choose on a weekly basis. I don't care if it's $1, $5, or $50. You don't have to put in the $250 that I do each time it wins, but I ask you to participate. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Why? Because it creates positive karma. And you and I both know in this thing we do called gambling, we can never have enough positive karma. Again, I give you the play for free. And if it wins, I then ask you to make a contribution. It's done on the honor system, guys. And again, over the past 4.5 years, this community of caregivers has contributed well over $350,000. So, it's usually on Tuesday or Wednesday on the site. Check it out. You'll see one of the feature plays from one of the handicappers given away for free, no strings attached. It's the Charity Play of the Week program, and I hope you become a member of one of the most important things that you'll ever come across in gambling. Nobody's ever done it. I created it, and it's definitely something that will produce some positive karma in your life and benefit others in a time of need. We are back, and let me just say, I love Rex Ryan. Well, at least I loved him last week because the Bills were my best bet. Everything I told you, if you got my best bet last week about the Bills, came to fruition. Of course, they were playing the San Francisco 49ers. Didn't have to be a psychic to know all the Bills were going to do was run on one of the worst run defenses in all of the NFL. And that's exactly what they did. 312 yards on the ground. Well, I got news for you guys. They're going to do the same thing this week against the Miami Dolphins, because next to the 49ers, the Dolphins also have the next worst run defense in the NFL. And if anybody thinks that this is an underpriced line, then you're with me. You're right. Because the Dolphins beat the Steelers last week, and that was just one of those games. Steelers were coming off back-to-back home blowouts of the Chiefs and the Jets, but we've seen them lay an egg before when they were on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles. And once Ben Roethlisberger got hurt early in that game, he wasn't the same. And as we saw, he subsequently is going to need knee surgery. And the Steelers have laid many eggs on the road the past couple of years. Steve, you're in Miami. What do you think? I think the Dolphins are frauds, and what we saw last week was just another example of the NFL being a parity league.
You know, Al, if I had to name my ex-wife after a football team, I'd call her the Bills. So I don't really like that team, obviously. But I have to give them their due. They have been playing considerably better. They got off to a slow start this season initially. And then what happened? Rex, remember, he fired his offensive coordinator. And me and you on the show, we mocked him. We laughed at him. We thought it was a funny move, but actually he gets the last laugh because, you know, he made that move. They won 4 games in a row since then. There's Linsanity going on in Buffalo. Anthony Lynn promoted to offensive coordinator, sparking the complete revival of this whole Buffalo Bills team and their seasonal aspirations. But I mean, it's true. The team is playing some really good football right now. Besides the Bills, Al, they own the fish. They covered 5 out of the last 6 times they met. Miami, believe it or not, historically is not a friendly place for the fish to play. I like Buffalo here as much as I have to regret it. Buffalo minus the deuce.
Hey, listen, Rex Ryan, whether he was with the Jets, whether he was with the Bills, his teams have covered 8 of the last 10 times
Always owned
he's
the Dolphins.
faced Miami. So he's definitely owned this series. The other thing, LaShawn McCoy, I thought he would have a chip on his shoulder last week when he took on the 49ers, when, no pun intended, he was facing his ex-coach, Chip Kelly, and he certainly ran with passion last week. 19 carries, 140 yards, 3 touchdowns. But you mentioned it. When they made the switch in offensive coordinators, going to Anthony Lynn, firing the highest paid offensive coordinator in the business, Greg Roman, they re-emphasized the ground game. Last 4 games, LaShawn McCoy, 73 carries, 470 yards. Now taking on a Dolphins run defense that is ranked 31st in the league, giving up a hell of a lot of yards, 147 yards a game, 4.5 yards a carry. And you know, when guys like me tell you stats like that, listen, when you're a gambler, you have to realize what that means is first down, 4.5 yards per carry. It's a hell of a lot easier to move the ball when it's 2nd and 5. You know, that's what that means. You can reel off 5-6 yards in that first down situation because you've got a good running back. It makes the game a hell of a lot easier. Next game, Tennessee and Indianapolis. Well, we saw the Colts on Sunday night absolutely fold once again like a cheap suit. Matter of fact, we talked about this game, and I told you, Houston Texans, I have not lost a game with them all season long, and they miraculously, if you heeded my advice and once again bought down that half point when that line crosses 3, 4, 7, sometimes 10, you got the overtime cover on Houston as they rallied from a 2-touchdown deficit with a furious comeback in the 4th quarter. And once again, Texans folded on the road. Now they're against the Tennessee Titans in Nashville. Tennessee blew a cover with their own 4th quarter collapse at home against Cleveland. I think, Steve, this one's fairly priced with Tennessee laying about 2.5 to 3 at home. I'm curious your take on this one.
Well, I mean, this is an episode of The Odd Couple all over again. 2 teams that are polar opposites, at least on the offensive side of the ball. Tennessee, they play that smash-mouth running game, while the Colts rely mostly on luck and his aerial attack, which has been good enough to earn Indy 9 straight wins in the series. I think that trend continues here, Al. And you know, in the game of rock, paper, scissors, pass always beats run, luck always beats the run, and Indy always beat the Titans. Give me the Colts here plus the points.
Yeah, playing devil's advocate, of course, listen, Indy always beat Houston, 5 straight wins until Sunday night. I will say this about the Colts, though. On the road, they're 0-3. Gave up 30 to Jacksonville when they played in London. Gave up 34 in Denver. Gave up 28 in Houston. In other words, their defense sucks. And, this Tennessee team, 28-13. You are up 28-13 with 6:43 to play at home against Cleveland. You're playing a third-string rookie quarterback in Cody Kessler. You allow him to throw for 336 yards, and you allow the Browns, the 0-6 Browns, to come back and get the backdoor cover 28-26 here in this game last Sunday. So, if you allow Cody Kessler to torch your defense, I would imagine that Andrew Luck is going to have some big numbers against you as well. Steve, I'd have to probably side with you in this particular case. It's not a game that I particularly have any interest in having any skin in this one, but I just don't know what to make of these Titans. 1 week they look like they're a rather decent team, even defensively. They want to play, as you say, smash mouth football. The next week, I do know one thing, though. The Colts play no defense, so maybe the over is the way to look at this game. 49 points, because the Colts, they've shown no defense on the road, and they've gone over 9 of their last 12 on the highway this season. Next up, the Atlanta Falcons returning home after a great road trip. Listen, 1-1 split, but you win in Denver. You give the Seattle Seahawks all you can handle. Now you're at home. You're laying 6.5 against the San Diego Chargers, who finally did not fold in the fourth quarter, pulling the upset last Thursday at home against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, well, the one thing we learned about San Diego this season, they're like that stingy ex-girlfriend on Facebook. They always keep it close. And like you said, it didn't change last Thursday night with the win over the Broncos. By the way, Al, to me, that was their first legitimate big win of the season. It was also the 5th time in 6 games that San Diego has gone down to the wire for the last-minute win or loss. Chargers, always tough on the road, and Matty Ice has been brilliant for Atlanta as well. 2 top guns at quarterback, only 51 points to go over the total. Falcons 5-1 going over the last 6 games. You know where I'm going here, Al. Give me over the posted total. This one easily soars over the number.
Here's an interesting trend that I found. The Falcons are 2-9 their last 11 when laying points. They're 9-1 their last 10 when catching points. They're a 6.5-point favorite here. They still don't have a defense. Phillip Rivers will carve up their secondary. At the same time, I don't think the Chargers can stop anybody either. So I would lean either taking the Chargers plus the points, or, as you said, go ahead and play this one over. It could be some real fireworks in the Georgia Dome. Final game that we're going to take a look at had all the promise in the world of being a good game, and then Roethlisberger had to go have the knee injury. Now you got Landry Jones quarterbacking the Steelers. This does not inspire a lot of confidence in playing the dog here, because when you look at what the Patriots have done in the first 2 games back with Tom Brady at the helm, I think all starting NFL quarterbacks will want to take a 4-week vacation to start the season. That is, of course, if they have a supermodel wife like Giselle. I don't know. But listen, the offense, they've scored 68 points in the first 2 wins that he's been back against the Browns and the Bengals. Tom Brady in those games, 57 for 75, 782 yards, 6 touchdowns. Gronkowski, 12 catches for 271 yards in those 2 games. I don't see, unless the Patriots decide to snooze through half of this game, how they don't easily cover the spread. We're doing this video, of course, shooting it early on Tuesday morning. This line is fluctuating between 7 and 8 points. I don't see how this number doesn't keep skyrocketing before kickoff.
Wow. Let's get one thing completely straight here, Al. This game does not take place in Pittsburgh. This game takes place in the minds of gamblers all over this great country. Since Brady's been back, me and you have been flat out begging people on this show to bet him like there's no tomorrow. And since Brady's been back, gamblers have remained in a frozen state of disbelief, unable to pull the trigger, unable to attach themselves to the obvious that Tom Brady is the epitome of a Hall of Fame quarterback, maybe the best quarterback ever. And Al, my father always said it, football is always a game of quarterbacks and coaches. And when you got Belichick and Brady, I'll say it again, you've heard me say it week in and week out, you either bet on them or just pass. So once again, I'm going with Brady minus the wood, no doubt, no fear, especially when it's only a free pick.
Hey, and listen, consider this as well. I just gave you Brady's numbers. This Steelers defense is ranked 29th in the league against the pass. I mean, we're talking, they're down with the New Orleans Saints, down with the Oakland Raiders. They allow opposing quarterbacks so far this season to complete 65.7% of their passes. They only have 8 sacks in their first 6 games. 4 of them came against the Jets a couple of weeks ago. Tom Brady's going to carve them up. And again, Landry Jones. If you have a lot of faith in Landry Jones, God bless you. That means the Steelers are going to try to run the ball. That's going to be their most effective option on offense. You're not going to run the ball on this Patriots defense, which is ranked 5th in the league, and stopping the run, giving up just 3.7 yards a carry and 92 yards a game. Game, set, match. New England, go ahead and lay the points, but guys, do it early because, again, this line is only going to go up as we get closer to kickoff. Well, guys, that'll do it for this week's edition of the Countdown to Kickoff show. We are the Football Insiders. For Steve Budin, I'm Al DeMarco, and until next week, make sure you have fun gambling and make a little money in the process. Good luck, everybody.